You won the room and still lost the deal. It's because the person who decides it was never in the room. Here's the thing nobody prepares you for. In every high-stakes conversation, there's an empty chair. Someone who isn't there, who you'll never get to talk to, but who makes the actual call later in a meeting you're not invited to. And most people spend the entire conversation performing for the chairs that are full, while the only one that matters sits empty in the corner. So if you've ever walked out of a meeting certain you nailed it, and then watched it quietly die for reasons nobody would explain, subscribe now. Jon and I are going to find the person who actually killed it and show you how to win them over without ever being in the same room.
Welcome to Own the Room, for people operating where the stakes are real.
Pitches, negotiations, leadership conversations that don't come with a second chance.
Here, you'll learn to control perception, read the room, and thrive in high-stakes communication. Now here's Jake Stahl, who's going to help you turn communication
into your unfair advantage.
Jon, if I recall correctly, you've got one of these, a deal you won and lost at the exact same time.
I've got a big scar from this one, Jake. It was a pretty big deal. And in my corner, my champion, the VP of Ops. Dana, okay? Dana loved it, right? She absolutely loved it. She was telling everybody the room was full of her people. So I'm thinking, since she's in charge of her people, that's great.
Makes sense.
It's going to work out. And by the end, they're not like asking if this is going to work. They're more asking when. So I'm already preparing in my mind, going through all the things of how I'm going to send the contract next, and then I'm going to enjoy this new contract and this new work, and how I'm going to spend the money. Like Dana literally says, this is a no-brainer. I'll walk through it internally.
Interesting. I'll walk through it internally. Just hold that phrase for now.
Okay, yeah, right. So I leave on a high, and then just a slow fade.
Yep.
Every day you're slowly getting a little less and less confident. A couple days in, you're like, oh, we're still good. But then a week down the road, you're like, okay, it's still working on it. Then there's 2 weeks. Then it's just totally dead. And then I'm waiting for a month to even find out why. Apparently, there was a budget steering committee, 5 people, 1 meeting. I wasn't in it, of course. And in that meeting, the CFO, some guy I never met, I never even spoke to him, but all he said was, we already paid for something that's supposed to do this. That was it. It was over.
So, one sentence from a man you never met.
Yeah, came down to that one sentence. And what kills me, Jake, is I could have totally demolished that objection. Like, we were nothing like that tool that they'd bought. Okay, 10 seconds and would have totally buried that. But I wasn't there, and Dana didn't have the answer. Can't blame her, but she just folded because she didn't know. So she didn't stop believing in our services. She just didn't have those same 10 seconds, that same objection that I had.
Yeah, and this is really common, but Jon, let's name exactly what happened, because it's not the story that you've been telling yourself. The story you're telling is the CFO killed my deal.
Yeah.
But Jon, that's not it. You lost the deal in the room while you were winning it. And
What?
it was, I know, but hear me out. It was because you poured everything into the people who were nodding, and you sent Dana into the most important meeting of the whole sales cycle, and she was unarmed. So the empty chair in your meeting was the CFO. You never looked at it, and you played to the full chairs.
Ooh. Well, that's a brutal way to put it.
Sorry.
But it's right, because if the CFO was in that meeting, it's a different outcome.
Yeah. And Jon, honestly, it's brutal because it's the fixable kind of thing. So if the CFO had killed it for a real reason, that's just a lost deal. but he killed it on an objection you could have answered in your sleep.
Yeah.
And the only reason it landed is that you weren't there and Dana wasn't ready. And Jon, that's not bad luck. That's, I guess you could call it a coverage gap.
Well, maybe, but here's my pushback. I really believe this one, okay?
Yep.
I got a yes. Like Dana said yes. She didn't say I'll think about it. She didn't say, "Oh, it sounds okay, I'll follow up." Her whole team even said yes.
Yeah.
So, how is that not commitment? I mean, at what point does a yes actually count?
A yes in the room is great, but it only counts when it survives in the room you're not in. And that's the distinction that runs this whole episode. Agreement is free, but commitment costs something. And we've talked about these costs in other episodes, with the cost of an email and the cost of deciding yes. And what you got from Dana was certainly agreement. Real, warm, sincere. Her yes, she meant it. But that agreement is cheap because in that moment, it doesn't cost her anything. She wasn't spending anything to say yes to you. But commitment is what's left when the yes has to survive friction. And that means the CFO's question, the budget fight, the political cost of sticking her neck out. And in this case, the second it hit that friction, the agreement evaporated because agreement was all it ever was.
Agreement was all it ever was. Yeah. So the yes was real. It just wasn't load bearing.
Yeah, and it's a great term one, and that's the one we used back in the ghosting episode. And really, it's the same trap. It was real and it wasn't tested. And Jon, I'd even argue there's probably a second layer here that I think a lot of people would miss. The most enthusiastic person in your meeting, which was Dana, is very often not the person with the power to decide. So enthusiasm and authority are two different currencies, and we confuse them constantly because enthusiasm is the one that feels good. It feels great in the moment. You're already spending the check. But the quiet person in the corner who asked one skeptical question, that's frequently the one you should have been worried about. And the person who wasn't even there, in this case, the CFO, he was the one that held the veto.
I understand. That makes sense because he wasn't in the room, but that's the part that messes with me because, like, how do you account for someone who isn't even in the room? Like, you can't read a face that isn't there.
Yeah, you're right. You can't read the face. And we talk about this a lot, reading face, reading body language. But in this case, you can't read the face. But Jon, you can find the chair. And there's a quiet tell for it. You need to watch whose name makes your champion's voice change. So when Dana talked about the rollout, she was loud, bright, really enthusiastic. But the second a certain name came up, and I'd bet money that there was a name, her energy dropped. She got careful, and she probably said something like, well, we'd have to see what he thinks. And that drop is the sound of the invisible veto. So the person your champion gets careful about is the person who can kill it. And Jon, that's the empty chair announcing itself if you're listening for it.
Yeah, it was the CFO. She did do that. She said, assuming finance is on board, and kind of laughed. And so I laughed too. It was kind of awkward, but whatever. And we moved on.
Yeah, and here's the tough thing to swallow. You both laughed past the most important sentence in the meeting. That little nervous laugh, that was really the veto introducing itself. And honestly, you waved at it as it went on by. And that's a missed deal. And Jon, I'm not trying to be too critical here, but the deal didn't die in the steering committee. It died right there in the laugh when neither of you stopped to deal with the empty chair. So let's talk about how you cover the chair you can't see. And Jon, I'm going to give you 5 moves to help you figure this whole thing out.
All right, I could have used this couple months ago, but all right, let's do it.
I'm running late, I guess. So, move 1, find the empty chair out loud. So, early in your presentation, ask the question that most people don't ask because honestly, it kind of punctures the whole good vibe.
Mm.
So, ask them, besides you, who else needs to be comfortable with this before it moves forward? Now, contrary to what you might think, you're not being pushy. You're mapping the real org chart, the one that doesn't match the titles. And Jon, seriously, I've seen this over and over. 9 times out of 10, the person in front of you is not the final yes, but they'll tell you exactly who it is if you just ask.
Ah, yes. And if I'd asked Dana that, she would probably say, well, CFO, and he's tight on the budget right now.
Yeah. And what CFO is it?
Right.
So when you ask that and she would give that answer, now the CFO is no longer an ambush. He's actually become a name that you can prepare for, which leads me to suggestion number 2. Read for the invisible veto. And what I mean is, it's not always the highest title, but you need to find the person who can kill it with 1 sentence. This could be the incumbent vendor's internal ally, the one whose turf or budget your thing threatens, or it could just be that skeptic, and you know who they are, the skeptic who everyone defers to. But you find them by listening for whose approval everyone keeps gesturing at. Whoever the room is quietly managing is the veto.
Well, Jake, this is getting a little ridiculous. I want to push back again because it's starting to sound like I'm running a political campaign here. Mapping vetoes, coaching my champion on what to say. We're going to make yard signs pretty soon. Isn't that manipulation? I don't want to be that guy.
No, Jon, I get it. And honestly, if you didn't push back, I'd be surprised because this can get sticky. So it's important to talk about this because the line matters. We've talked about this in other shows, and Jon, my take on manipulation is getting someone to act against their interest using something false. And the reality is, this is the opposite. You're taking a true agreement, one you'd happily make to the CFO's face, and making sure it actually reaches him intact. So you're not putting words in Dana's mouth that she doesn't believe. You're handing the believer the facts she needs to defend what she already believes in a room you're not allowed to go to. And Jon, that's not manipulation. That's not abandoning your champion to fight unarmed. There's nothing slimy about loading the gun for the person who volunteered to carry it.
Okay. Yeah, that I can live with. It's just not leaving Dana hanging.
That's exactly right. And that leads to move number 3. And really, it's the whole ball game. Arm your champion with a portable argument. Because here's the reality. Your pitch is about to be repeated secondhand by someone less fluent than you under hostile questioning when you're not there to clarify. So whatever you want to survive the trip has to be small enough to carry. And I'm talking 1 sentence. So if your value takes you 4 minutes and a slide deck to explain, Jon, it's going to die in the hallway. Because Dana can't carry 4 minutes into a budget meeting. She can just carry 1 sentence.
It's kind of like a game of telephone.
What do you mean?
The telephone game. You ever play that as a kid? You
Oh
whisper
my God,
something
yes.
down the line. Whatever comes out the other end is what counts,
Right.
which is never what you said. It's what the last kid says.
Right.
So that's exactly what's happening here. Like I kept thinking my job was say it perfectly to Dana, which I did, but it was to make sure that not the first kid, Dana, but the last kid, the CFO, heard something that still made sense.
John, that's exactly it. If you remember, you don't win telephone by having the best original sentence.
Right.
You win it by having the most survivable
Mhm.
sentence. So you hand Dana the survivable version. So maybe in this example, and I wasn't in the meeting, but maybe in this example, it was something as simple as we do the one thing your current tool was never built for, and here's the number that proves it.
Yeah.
So it's short enough to survive the relay, and also it moves us into move 4, which
Mm.
is preload the rebuttal you won't be there to give. You said you could quash this in 5 seconds,
Yeah.
and I believe that 100%. So you want to arm Dana with that. And here's what you might say to her. Again, I wasn't there, so I'm just winging this. You might say, tell Dana to say, when finance says we already pay for something like this, here's the one line that ends it. So, what you're doing, John, is you're scripting your own defense for a courtroom that you've been barred from.
Yeah, and you're anticipating those objections.
Correct.
Hmm.
And that leads right into our last move, which is move number 5. And that's to de risk it for the champion, not just the buyer. Because the one thing we need to remember, John, is Dana is spending her credibility to push your product. And if championing you might make her look foolish in front of the CFO, she's certainly not going to do it when it counts. She's going to fold exactly like she did. And honestly, John, who can blame her? She
Mm.
needs to keep that political capital. So you want to make backing you safe for her. Give her the proof, the answer, the cover. Because the easiest person to abandon is the one who armed nobody. And the hardest deal to kill is the one where your champion walks in bulletproof.
So it's like, I love my sports analogies.
I do.
It's like I'm an NFL team who loaded up the roster and used our best strategies on a preseason game. The deal
Exactly
was
right.
never even decided in that meeting I was in.
Yeah. And John, you could say it was decided in the hallway after the one you weren't even in. So I think the takeaway here is stop trying to win the meeting and focus on winning the hallway.
Win the hallway. That's the line, isn't it? Because the meeting's just the part that you can see, right? The deal, it happens in the hallway.
John, and maybe that's our sticky note of the day, and we should write that down. Win the hallway. Take that, post it on your monitor, because I think what we kind of talked about and discovered here is the hallway is where the empty chair finally sits down, and you better have sent someone in there who's ready for it.
Mm.
So, John, let's recap this and put it back together. What do you actually do differently with the Dana deal now that we've hashed this all out?
Yeah, well, first of all, I stopped celebrating the full room. I find the empty chair out loud. Like, who else has to be okay with this?
Yep.
That's number one.
Right.
After considering that, I listen for the invisible veto. So, whose name changes Dana's voice?
Good.
A subtle little voice change you talked about. Then, instead of just thanking her and walking out of the room and going, "Yay, we crushed it in this preseason game," I arm her one portable sentence, like you mentioned, that she can carry. The
Yeah.
rebuttal to that CFO's objection that I probably could have seen coming, preloaded enough to totally cover the objection and to know for her that backing me doesn't put her neck out. That's so
Exactly.
important too. And then I finally just send her into the hallway ready and I wait, but that's so much better than sending her in unarmed and just hoping.
John, that was an excellent summary. And I want you to notice the reframe under all five. You're not the closer in a high stakes deal with an empty chair. You're the coach, to go back to your sports analogy.
Yeah.
The game gets played in a stadium you'll never enter by a player you don't control. So you better train them before kickoff.
Yeah.
And John, the reality is the people who lose these deals think the meeting is the event. But the people who win them know the meeting is just rehearsal for a hallway conversation they're never going to hear.
Aha. Agreement is in the room. Commitment in the hallway.
Great way to put it. Yes. And only one of those closes. So here's where we started. You won the room and lost the deal. And it was because the person who decides it was never in the room. So before your next big conversation, look for the empty chair, ask who's in it, find out what they'll say when you're not there to answer, and put that answer in the hands of the one person who will be. In this case, it was Dana. So don't perform for the faces in front of you. They feel good, but they don't decide. You want to win the room you'll never walk into, because that's the whole game. Everything you can see in that room in front of you is just the rehearsal.
Thanks for checking out Own the Room with Jake Stahl. If you've gotten value from this episode, share it with the solopreneur in your life who wants to know how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected. Review and rate the show wherever you check out podcasts. And grab your copy of Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. We'll catch you next week on Own the Room.